Hello, I'm Rebecca the Maths Lady, here to help you become a fabulous primary maths teacher so that all your children love their maths and become fluent and creative and confident with it. This is the 12th video on teaching maths to children in year 1 who are 5 or 5 to 6 years old, and it's all about geometry, which is shape, position and direction. We're going to look at shape first and then we'll cover position and direction. So what's shape all about in year 1? Well, children will have already been introduced to some basic shapes, and in year 1 we're going to talk a lot more about the details of those shapes, when a shape is or is not those shapes, and we're going to try and use some exploratory language to describe random shapes they haven't come across before. So let's look at 2D, that's two-dimensional or flat shapes first. The curriculum wants us to look at rectangles, including squares, and circles and triangles. So we want to find ways of exploring how these shapes can vary. For example, what shape is this? Can your children clearly see that that's a square? Which of these are rectangles and which aren't? It turns out they're all rectangles. I haven't put in a square to draw out the confusion, is a square a rectangle? This black one does have a longer length than width. The precise explanation of why a square is a rectangle really doesn't come in until children are familiar with right angles and parallel lines. If that issue does come up in conversation in year 1, you can say, well, it turns out that a square is a special type of rectangle. Like if you talk about animals with 4 legs, a mouse would be a special one of those, but not all animals with 4 legs are mice. But it probably won't come up. A square's just a square and a rectangle's just a rectangle generally in year 1. Is this a circle? We can use informal measuring to puzzle out that it's wider than it is high, and a circle has to be the same length across anyway. Are either of these triangles? Well, this one is. You can get a perfect answer for that. This one is more debatable, and it's great to get your children having an argument about whether it is or isn't a triangle, because the language they'll be using and the concepts they'll be thinking about are great and entirely appropriate. And then we can move on to discussing and exploring shadows, leaves, other shapes in the natural environment that young children see as being flat. Get them to try and notice what those shapes are and describe it in their own language. You're laying down foundations here that will enable them to much more quickly understand and name other shapes as they get older. And then we can look at 3-dimensional shapes. The curriculum talks about cubes, cuboids, spheres and pyramids. And pyramids, of course, can have different bases. Can they still tell that this is a pyramid if it's upside down? And you'll want to go on hunts for these shapes in the environment around you. You'll want to gather up boxes and things of all different sorts of shapes and sizes that you can talk about, and that leads you on to the fact that some of those shapes aren't perfectly the shapes you're expecting them to be. How can you describe them? And you're laying fantastic foundations for their future learning of 3-dimensional shape. And of course you can have great fun getting them to make those key 3-dimensional shapes out of clay or dough. In the middle of cooking or another activity where you're working with clay or dough, you can just pop in an exercise where they have to make their dough into these different shapes. Perhaps they can do it behind their back without looking. They can try, and it's great for developing their imagination, and you can return to your original task, whatever you were trying to do with that dough or cooking. That's it for shape. So let's move on to the other part of geometry, which is position and direction. Position is easy. It's all about describing where things are relative to each other, and you can easily work that into so many year 1 activities. You can be in the middle of a PE lesson and you can tell everyone to stand on top of something and describe what they're standing on top of. Hopefully it won't be another child. We're looking at between, behind, in front of, and so on. But direction is harder, mainly because children still struggle with left and right. So for direction, we're talking about going forwards, going backwards, making quarter turns, half turns, 3/4 turns to their right, to their left, and clockwise, clockwise is effectively to your right if you're in year one. So most teachers just get stuck in and start ordering their children around blindfold, giving instructions to each other and see how you go. And for a lot of children, a bit of correction will get them there to where they need to be with their understanding. However, if you have children who still struggle with left and right, here's a short video on left and right from reception class. And if their problems are deeper than that, I've got a video on motor sensory integration and how important the exercises associated with that are for developing children's awareness of their position in space. And that's a really interesting video with expert Charlotte Davis, and I just recommend it to any teacher of this age because it's a bit of understanding about child development that you really should have. One quick insight, they haven't actually come across 3/4 in their curriculum so far. So if they're struggling with 3/4 turns, you can do it 1/4 at a time, but it can be useful to do some visuals on 3/4 and just spend some time paying attention to that. And then of course we can move away from moving each other and moving objects to programming roamers. And children really enjoy their work programming roamers like B-bots, which all teachers tell me are excellent and they really enjoy working with. So we've got the link there into computer programming, but it's the same thing. So that's it. In these videos, we've now covered the whole of how to teach the Year 1 curriculum effectively for deep understanding to all children. Next Thursday, I'll be back with a final video for the Core Year 1 series, which will be all about the human aspects of teaching maths in Year 1, about classroom management, lesson planning, about working with your managers, about working with parents, and about managing yourself and your journey as you become an expert teacher. And then I'm open for doing collaborative work, or if you're an expert who knows things that maybe I've missed, please get in touch. I'm happy to give you credit for what you do or keep you anonymous as you prefer, and we can do videos together. If you're looking for the documentation or the Facebook discussions that accompany these videos, they're in the Expert Primary Maths Teacher Planning Facebook group. And finally, if you'd like to know when these videos are published, please subscribe and click on the bell. If you'd like other teachers to see these videos, please share them. They won't know otherwise. If you've got time to click on like, that would be fantastic. If you don't like, please add a comment, or if you're left with questions, please ask them. I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.